Yeah, hello and good evening to the second Musikalischer Online Salon of this year's season. I'm glad to premiere Rho Cassiopeiae by Gráinne Mulvey tonight. Gráinne, of course, Gráinne is our guest, and we'll talk about her approach to composing and the piece after I played a bit in the beginning. The language tonight will be English, but if there are any German guests who will ask me to translate, of course, we will also have a German question translated and then with a translated answer. Ja, guten Abend und herzlich willkommen zum zweiten Musikalischen Online Salon, diesmal mit der Uraufführung von Rho Cassiopeiae von Gráinne Mulvey, die auch da ist und nachdem ich einen kleinen Teil vom Stück gespielt habe, uns etwas über ihr Komponieren und über das Stück im Besonderen erzählen wird. Die Grundsprache heute ist Englisch, wenn aber jemand sich des Englischen nicht mächtig genug fühlt und auf Deutsch eine Frage stellen will, kann er oder sie das gerne tun und ich übersetze die Frage und hinterher die Antwort. Gut. So this is everything we need for now. So I play not the very beginning of the piece. I decided to skip the first 2 or 3 minutes and then start and play. I didn't stop the time. It's something, I think it's something between 2 and 3 minutes. I'll play so you have the first impression of the piece. Thank you. Gráinne.
Hey, I've been asked specifically to talk about processes and just compositional things that I use as navigators into work. And so the process really for me working with a performer is very important in particular. So if I have a performer that I know will be able to explore a whole lot of elements and a whole lot of new techniques, then I'm definitely going to try and explore these. But I like to use something like, at the moment, this cello is detuned as well. So there's a low F, and then the G is quarter tone flat, and then the D is normal and the A is quarter tone flat. So things like that I can that I'm allowed to experiment with gives me another palette of colors to use, and that's what I like. As far as other technical devices like the harmonic series, which is really nice to use, and these are aids, and I like to have things that I can use liberally, but I'm not exactly as confined to just using things strictly, because I find that there's an awful lot of number crunching that you can do, and I think all composers realize that we're bombarded with different techniques, but it's something that you kind of find that you gravitate towards. So what I like in a piece that I can work with is contrast of color, maybe, and very, very dissonant to very much more consonant kind of sonorities. And they're two things that I've been occupied with. Also energy and flux. And because this is about a star that is has that habitual type of flux in its cycle, it's a giant star that's, as Matthias relayed in the pre-video, it's like 40 times the mass of the sun, and it's 400 times the size of the sun, and 40 times the mass of the sun. So it's a massive star, and it's out on the periphery of our solar system, which is weird as well. It's very bright, and we can see it in our sky. And I think because I looked at some imaging of how it actually fluctuates from kind of very active, and it bulges and does very weird things. It looks like it could go supernova. Maybe it has, I don't know, but it's an interesting celestial body. And so I thought of flux of different changes in character within the cello piece, different techniques, different things like pizzicati and glissandi, etc., all those elements that are kind of intermittently mixed with longer passages of sustained material. So that was the idea for me. It's as simple as that. I think that when we think about processes, every time we go to write a composition, our processes change depending on what we're writing for, obviously, but also if we're writing for electronics and things like, there's people, we're all used to that here, Ian and you, that are both au fait with that. So they understand, like, you use different processes, how you work with electronics sometimes with in comparison to acoustic instruments. And then how do you actually meet those two grounds? So when I'm working in that field, I like to think that there's a blend or a marriage between both different types of worlds, sound, sonorities. And so that's been my occupation, I think, for a long time. And I think we have so much from the 50s and 60s that we're standing on the shoulders of giants that really gave us the power to explore these techniques probably further, or maybe even understand them more at this point in time, because I don't really see how we invent new things. We just kind of expand on them, maybe, and that's how a composer develops, or that's how things change. Apart from that, that's mainly the gist of it. I do like to have elements of chaos and within my pieces. That's just something I just like to do. Where there's these kind of areas that are mellower or milder, and other parts that are more chaotic. And I like to, if I can, push the boundaries of the player. if I know the player, but also I like to home in on what the player really likes to play as well. So it's an all-embracing package, I hope, in that I have to consider what the player is fundamentally relaxed with, and maybe what the player isn't relaxed with, and try and bridge that gap, or try out new things, or ask for new things to be explored. In this case with Matthias, we had a really excellent collaboration. I feel it was excellent anyway. I got so much more. I felt I'd really explored the instrument much more freely, and it gave me that breadth to kind of take another level, another area that I hadn't really formally explored before, as far as detuning and as far as bowing. And he has a wonderful array of bows, and one of them that I've used, which is a bow with ridges in it as well. It's like a unicorn bow. And it's violent looking. Doesn't that look like you'd snap the strings playing that? But it's absolutely wonderful. And it, you either play it kind of horizontally or vertically, and it still gives this beautiful kind of color, these beautiful textures and things like that as well. So he uses that towards the end. And then detuning, he was quite specific with, if I detuned, I've tuned down to F. I know Xenakis tunes it down to a C in Normus Alpha, but the F anyway, he said, well, if you play that really harshly, that's going to move up in tone. So there are parts where I do want it just to be liberally moving, either fluctuating in pitch as well, just like the planet fluctuates in light. I mean, it's gone from, maybe a super red giant, and then it's gone to being a blue star and a yellow star. So that's all those kind of color fluctuations as well. So that's what I was trying to achieve with this. And maybe I've spoken too much now. So maybe if you want to take up from there, Matthias, maybe that's enough.
Yeah, just Bridget, it was you who asked if you could see the score. Sure.
Oh, look, there's the score.
So it's not that easy. So this is the score. This actually is where I started right now. It's not so easy with the light, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, we've got to wait till. Okay. Oh, wait, that's it. Okay. Oh, no camera. Oh.
camera.
I don't know.
No camera up there.
No, gosh.
Doesn't come on camera.
I don't know.
It's fine.
Okay.
Gráinne, that's a question for you.
Yes, yeah. What, I don't know what it is. Sorry, I just did a lot of pre-planning for her work. Or is there much compositional improvisation? Well, I think about it a good long time, and I take kind of things like the planning process as in different kind of harmonic schemata, maybe if it's chromatic or whatever at some point, and then to more kind of lush textures. I think of those things. Some parts of it are improvised, but I never give really much in the line of complete free improvisation. It's always a certain amount of control on the improvised parts. So that's the elements that I work on, and that's how I do work on. If it depends as well. I mean, I had to think of retuning. So when you're thinking of retuning, you're thinking of, all the scale right up through every string. You're thinking of all those things. So you're mapping kind of drafts of that, what works with it, whatever. So all those elements come into it as well. As far as trying to stay with the process, well, I was thinking in terms of microtonality, basically, and thinking in scales and that, and also fluxes and different textures. Those were something that I was concerned with. So the process, it changes for every composition, given that if you're writing for piano, you have a different schematic completely. It's a different mechanism of playing. A whole different plethora of chords and things that you can use. You've a much bigger, a broader capacity to have a larger canvas in some ways. But it doesn't take away from, like this instrument here. And in this case, I've actually have quite a large canvas because the player is just phenomenal and just can work on any level, and so it can mix certain textures and things together. I don't know whether that's completely answered your question, but like I've worked with processes and things, and yeah, I do some number crunching and all that kind of stuff, but it's not something that I'm very concerned about because I know a lot of composers really do that anyway.
Gráinne, can I ask you how important the cello repertoire is and what other composers is to you? What other composers have done for the cello? Are you in conversation with that tradition in some way, if you know what I mean, that you have that in your mind and you're talking to it or bouncing off it in some way?
I'm aware of it, but I'm always cautious of it as well because I don't want it to actually influence the process. I'm aware, Bach, cello suite, and the whole lot could die as well. There's lots of composers, and there's loads of composers that have written for cello really well. Loads of concerti for cello solo. So it's just that because of that legacy, you are aware of it, all right. One becomes aware of it through looking at scores, etc. But I also am cautious that that's done. So I want to do something slightly different, or I want to explore other terrain. And also I'm aware of maybe their stylistic concerns as well. So this is possibly in a different type of idiom, and I don't want to follow suit on that. So I prefer at this stage to kind of divorce myself as much as I can from the repertoire, only because I know it does inform, scores inform how we actually develop, etc., and how we see, we view different techniques, stylistic concerns, or how we write well for instruments or voice leading, etc. All these elements that are important, as in anything to do with music. But I'm also wary that I want to have my own individuality about it, and that's something I'm concerned with. For rightly or wrongly, it's just the way I operate now. It's like I want to kind of push the boundaries, and I want to be kind of very dogged and persistent and what I want to try and achieve at this stage. But yeah, of course I have great reverence for all other repertoire that has come before. It's, I'm just trying to do my own thing. It's quite difficult to navigate in composition this time. It's particularly this era, I think, because we've had so much great composition in that from the 50s and 60s and 70s. We have a great legacy, and we just lost a great composer there as well, George Crumb, and I really liked George Crumb. He's just a wonderful composer. So we have all that legacy, which is fantastic, and it's always great to kind of go back to this repertoire, look over things, hear, just experience a performance maybe of some work or whatever. Whatever setting or whatever arena, if you have a good ensemble that perform a work, that's also important. To be able to hear a live production of something is great as well. So whether that's older repertoire or not, it doesn't matter either, because sometimes all kinds of things affect a performance one way or the other, and even a recording, whatever. So you have various different types of performances of very established pieces, and they can all be so different. So you have this array of different things, and every performance is always going to be different. So you kind of have to look out from that as well, but embrace everything as much as you can. So yeah.
Oh, that's excellent, Gráinne. Thanks.
No,
go on, Derek. Sorry.
No, I was just thanking Gráinne. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, Gráinne, you're talking so much about legacy, and also when you started your talk about your approach to composing, you talked about the giants of the 50s and the 60s. If you look back to these pieces, Is it more to ensure yourself about what you're doing, or is it more to know what you don't want to do? What was
No, I know it's
in
actually,
former
it's,
time, but what you
yeah.
don't want to do now?
No, it's kind of like more to comfort me, I think, in some ways, because I find like looking back at pieces, you know, Stockhausen or Xenakis, I find that quite emotional. I find it that it is comforting to know that, okay, you have this to work out from, so you have more to do. It's more or less like there is a kind of a bedrock so that you can go out from that, and you've got all that information. You can see from scores, and I love looking at scores and different details in it. I'm fascinated, you know, by how people notate different types of techniques or notate different type of texture. That's always fascinating. The graphics, and I love people that actually are able to, you know, like Stockhausen produce beautiful graphic scores, and I envy them so much because I cannot draw, and I have siblings that can draw, and you know, I had a father who could sketch, and I can't do that. So I'd love to be able to do that, but no, these are definitely a comfort, and these are definitely a source of still inspirational, I think, in a lot of ways. And that's not to say that you try to you know, you try to imitate them exactly or anything like that. It's looking at them, it kind of looking at everything that you can and seeing what else can be done. I mean, there is still more, I think, that can be done on instruments as well. It's just, you just need to get people who are really on side with it rather than trying to kind of streamline you into writing maybe something you don't want to write. But I think people should write as well from what they experience too, or they should write from what they like as well. That's one thing too, because if you do this, then you know you're going to have something that you actually feel convinced by, and that's something that I think is important in writing as well. But I love scores of the 50s and 60s, and I think, no, I would never have that arrogance to even think that for a minute. I think that they're a blessing there. I know they're comforting me. Yeah, I have that to look back on and to go out from. So yeah.
Okay, before asking just questions to Gráinne, I would like to ask everyone else, what was the most in this part of the piece, which is just 1/5 of it, but what was the thing that was the most stunning to you, or the most exciting, or whatsoever, the most something?
I think I'll have a go at answering that. I really love the chaotic speed of it. I mean, it really kind of embodied that concept of the giant star in the sky, like hurtling through space at a really, really fast speed. So I thought that it just kind of really envelops the chaotic notion that Gráinne was talking about earlier.
Thanks, Jude. Judith is a fine composer. She's another writer for cello. It's actually, I've just got your CD today and I have to listen to it later on, but it looks great. I'm looking forward to it. She's brilliant.
Thanks, Gráinne.
I enjoyed the parts where you have multiple things happening at the same time, which is why I asked about the pre-planning and wondering if you were working with ideas of mass. You know,
yeah.
Because it's very exciting to see Matthias wrestle with, you know, one thing low down in the neck, another thing with the bow high up, and something else going on at the same time. It probably embodies that idea of chaos you were talking about, but it seems very carefully controlled chaos.
Yeah, it probably is, and that's because I was kind of aware of, okay, I don't want it to be kind of like this concept of kind of a supernova kind of thing either. It's kind of like fluctuations, that's what I've been looking for. And like the two climaxes are the really high note, there's a very, very high note he stays, and the lowest note of the tunes, the strings at the very end. At the very end, it's kind of like, I just thought, no, that'll be nice because it gives that kind of warm glow. It's there, it's unstable. You just don't know what's going to happen with it. I didn't want it to kind of sound like totally all chaotic. So it is kind of a controlled. It's great that you picked up on that, because it is a controlled kind of chaos. But it's great because he can do so many things, you know. Like there was one part I was working on, and he suggested it was kind of like I wanted a kind of a very fast flurry of notes in that, just a kind of a cascade of things happening at that point. And he just said, "Oh well, maybe you should just try glissando ricochet." And I thought, wow, I haven't done that before. I hadn't heard that expression. You know, the way you think things are just not capable, you just don't come across that. And it's just that we just actually, I just put it in, it just was much, much better, and it just sounded great, you know. So yeah, so like it's great when you have that facility that he can go to different states and create that kind of chaos, that kind of fluctuation. And take those dynamic levels from really loud to extremely soft as well. Yeah.
Well, maybe I just show this thing you were talking about, because we already came past it.
Yeah.
It's what Gráinne wrote was.
Yeah.
And actually here it's okay, but up here.
Yeah.
The half tones are so close to each other that I would need a sharpener for my fingers to really play them. So whatever I do can't be precisely what she wrote. But if I do it like this, it sounds like I'm playing half tones, but I'm not. What I'm playing is just the glissando with the bouncing bow. So if I'm very precise, it's really just a chromatic.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that's, I mean, that was also for me one of the nice things about our collaboration. That, of course, the composer thinks, if I can write chromatic here, why not here? But it's not possible because the notes are so close together. And then tell her, well, Gráinne, that's the problem, and that's a possible solution.
Yeah.
And sometimes she took my solution, sometimes not, of course. But I mean, that's that's the thing about collaboration, that two of us have ideas, but it's her piece, so of course she makes the decision, if possible. If possible, I mean, there are. Yeah, as I said, some things weren't possible because it's too close, or because, Ian, because you mentioned it, we have this part where I'm playing here. That's okay, I can fake this, but we have other parts where she wanted me to play something differentiated here and then plug different chords. Which I said, Gráinne, oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And we changed them.
I just can't do it. I'm just one simple human being. But it's great because we were looking together where it's possible, where it's not possible, and I think some of the changes that came afterwards were also in relation to the things where I said, no, that's not possible. So then later on, she changed the dynamics or the sound for the same place. Okay.
Okay. Are there any more questions, or should we give it a whirl, Matthias? Play it.
Well, still quite early, but that's not a problem. I can play the whole piece now, and we talk about it afterwards. Usually it's the end of the concert, the performance, but if there's nothing else to mention now, I think it would be the best idea that I play it, and then there will be a lot to say afterwards, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
I would expect.
Okay.
Okay, so
Thanks.
I just have to switch some things because I want to have you. I want you to have a big picture of me during I'm playing. And I want to have a better sound, which means that everyone who talks will have an echo, but you won't talk because I'm playing. And I will record it. So just. So now I should be big. Now we have the different tone. Now I cut this microphone and I start the recording. Can you see where I'm going? Okay, because this is, so it's here in the beginning. I'm not sure and I can't see the picture very well right now. So, here we go.
Thank you, Matthias. Bravo. Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
Gráinne.
Thank you so much. Gosh, it feels longer than I thought it was.
The recording time now was 18 and a half.
Okay.
I didn't play 18 and a half, but maybe 18. And when I played it before, it was the first time it was 15, the second time it was 17. I think it's just because I'm getting more acquainted to these slow parts.
Yeah.
And,
They're lived in a
friends
bit.
with it.
Oh, I'm really delighted with that. Thanks so
Anyway.
much. Thanks so much. Wow.
No, but
Can I get the recording from you?
sure. Sure, I think if the quality is good, I'll also make a YouTube video from the video we had now from Zoom plus the recording. But
Great.
you get the recording anyway, of course.
Great. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Matthias, I just say you look like you were having a lot of fun there. You look like you really enjoyed that piece. So what were the pleasures for you?
Sorry, what was the last?
So what were the obvious pleasures of playing that piece for you?
Well, I just love to play cello. So it's really hard to give me something I don't like to play.
That was a very Irish answer, Matthias.
And what I like about this piece is this aspect of instability that Gráinne mentioned before, that I'm doing things but then always coming away from it, or getting to a different place. Then this thing with the in the end with the F, you would expect a sound like this, but it's already not stable because of the detuning of the G string. And then when I play the low string louder, it's getting higher. So that this sounds strange in a very different way from every second, and in a way you can't plan. And this is also something I like when I have a very clear instruction what to do with a result you can't control.
Yeah, no, I get you. That's fascinating. There's a lot of space to play or for something to emerge that can surprise you.
Yeah.
And possibly even the composer nearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the singing bit was, which we didn't mention. I meant to mention that he sings at one point. And yeah, that came across really well. It's kind of, I always got shocked by that and was wondering, did I put that in? And of course.
Yeah, that's Derek, because you asked, this is also, in a way, if it weren't in this place, it would be kitsch. But this one, I really love that.
Yeah, actually, it was a good idea.
I mean, it's also out of tune. But you remember we could have these like some bells ringing somewhere, softly and very beautiful, and we just have the remembrance of this.
Yeah, I was glad you got me to change around the harmonic settings, so that was really helpful as well. Yeah, so
like this. I mean, it was somehow it worked what you wrote before, but oh no, this one not.
Yeah.
And this is nice. Now you can really hear what's happening.
Yeah.
And we have this other place. This is also another aspect of what I liked about our collaboration. I have this very high harmonics. where you always can't tell what is the pitch. And I have to use a special fingering to get it sounding, but in a way you never can rely on the result. And when you
I almost have a subtone to that as well, which is quite
Yeah.
quite nice too,
and
like an A or something.
when we had the first rehearsal with the piece, I showed her this is the way it sounds, and it can't be. You can't rely on it. If you want really this, if you want to have this melody, put it an octave lower, and we have. It's still high, and we can really follow the pitch. But she said, "No, I want this very high thing." And this is I like if you're in making music, are always asking this question: what could music be more than what we already know it is?
Oh, that's very good, pushing the boundaries. Can I ask just a question of you, Gráinne, if you don't mind? How important was your sort of non-musical reading to actually giving you musical ideas? So I'm guessing you read quite a bit about this star and astrology, and how important is that to your process of composition?
It's really, in this case, it was just the knowledge of it and just reading. It's not nearly, it's hard to put something as abstract anyway. I mean, if you didn't have the title, would you have guessed it was about a star? If you didn't have a title on this piece at all, you wouldn't have guessed what it was about. It's quite subjective, really, in a way. It's just a navigational tool. And as Ian has pointed out as well before, just to have worked with different textures and masses, that's really what I like to do. So before I'm even trying to think in terms of pitch or notation, just an idea of, oh, it does this. And I actually just saw some clips of it rotating. So it kind of looked like it bulged and it had different kind of things going on inside it and everything. So that was interesting as well. So it's just almost like a start. If I'd wanted to go really full into actually trying to explore the numbers that were there, like 40 and 400 times, or you could do something like that, or you could compile a whole lot of information. But I find that sometimes when I get into that domain, I end up taking it apart and I go off the rails, and it doesn't suit me. So it's, tools are there, but I don't like anything too organized. It's almost like it's. Does that make sense? I don't know whether it makes sense to.
It's a starting point.
You understand, Joe, because Joe works with me regularly and is a flautist, Matthias, and he's copyist as well.
Any mistakes are my fault.
No, he's great. Really. But yeah, so like, and we've been looking at this as well. Joe was looking at it as well. So just seeing pictures of it, and kind of different states and that, and then reading about it being kind of it was a red star and it's a blue star, it was hot, and it's kind of like a yellow star now. It's a giant superstar. So we don't know whether it's going to go over or whether it has gone over. Like we don't even know that, but it's just the idea. It's not really, I mean, you can map out things to correlate with numbers and ideas, and all composers, we've all done that kind of thing, or we all do sometimes take this on board. But in this case, it was just really tools for mass and idea. And then thinking about the cello and what it could do, and then thinking about textures and thinking about, what Matthias was showing me as well. And the collaboration every week, there was a new trick that I learned. It's something which I went away thrilled with and thought, yeah, now I can conjure up ideas for the mass of that. But I can start drawing on this because I can scribble and I can have fun with that idea. So it's like bits of ideas and things like that kind of gel it together, really. And the idea of the star is just it's just a navigation tool, but there's nothing homed in on the specifics or the mathematics of it or anything, unfortunately.
Gráinne, can I ask, just in relation to that structure, like I can't believe it was 17 minutes long. I was so captivated by it that it just went by in a flash. Matthias, it was absolutely fantastic, and Gráinne, just phenomenal piece, and full of so many treats, so many amazing little moments. But in terms of the structure of it, is there any kind of a fictional storyline or imagery in your head when you're writing it in terms of what comes next and how you actually structured the piece from beginning to end?
Well, I always work in usually from sounds that I'm not very aware of or sounds that are not there. So that's kind of like almost like it helps me filter into because I'm terrified of writing music anyway. And it's just a process I go through. It's kind of like, I'll navigate. So I'm going to scribble. It's like Smith Brindle says, you just put something down on the page first. So have a try of it. And then think of, okay, how does that filter into sound or whatever else? What tools do I have? And so I'm thinking of my lowest string is F. And like, I never used to like F as a pitch or a frequency, but lately now I love it. I've found kind of it has more significance for some bizarre reason. I used to think it was quite a cold frequency to use, but now I absolutely adore it. And I thought the F would be really nice to tune it down to. And I don't know why. That pitch, it could have been C, it could be anything, but F just, I thought midway it's going to be not too slack, and I still have some tension there. It will actually be unstable. I mean, if you really bow it well, it's going to be unstable. So I thought, okay, that I'd like to come out at the end. So I thought, okay, that should be kind of like the nice part at the end for me. I just wanted that to happen. Then I thought the top part of it, really high trill at one point, if it it's nearly 3/4 of the way there anyway in the piece, but that comes out. I thought that would be, a culmination. So it just navigates in, and then I just thought of different textures. Like I kept thinking in terms of, okay, how I'd have my chromaticism, and how I'd have my, pizzicati in between. So that we'd have episodes all the way through, which would navigate through those points, because those are the main points of the piece are actually the end and that just really high thrill. So everything is culminating in that and moving to that. But I didn't want it to go in a process where we would feel that kind of regression, So I wanted to have other states that would convey that this is unstable. But the cello does an awful lot of different things. It has all these fantastic array of sounds. So within that, I can have a schematic where there are episodic things happening, but they culminate in certain points where you have either tremolandi, or you have very big chords, etc., or you have that high note at 3/4 way, and then the lower. So that's how I worked on it, as episodic, as how to navigate, and then as to what is possibly physically possible as well, because there were some things which would have been just impossible for any cellist, I think. And Matthias kind of said, you just can't do this because I cannot, there's no way in God's earth I can stretch that far over to that string. So yeah, I learned a lot from it because I made mistakes along the way, which is good because I like making mistakes, and then I'm picked up from a professional, and then you say, okay, let's try it this way then. So let's see how this is going to work. So all the way along the line, there was that dialogue, and that's how it came about. That's how I structured from episodic kind of material. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think also the collaborative aspect is very evident, because it's impossible you were talking earlier about writing for specific cellists, and I think you've just written a piece specifically for Matthias, in that if some other cellist picks that up, I think they would have, I don't know, you can correct me on this, they possibly will have a lot of questions for you, just to kind of make sure they're doing the right thing or whatever. I'm sure it's all very detailed in the score, but I imagine there's an element of kind of interpretation involved, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but
there is that. You're actually, you're right.
Like, how much back and forth did you have together in terms of you I mean, I know I play the cello myself, I'm just learning, but I know how difficult it is to do certain things on it. And I think having the cello there is a very good way of like figuring stuff out, even if you're not a player or a professional player. But if you don't have that, I think the collaborative aspect is very important, because you can ask questions and see if things that you can try out that even Matthias maybe didn't realize he could do, or, you know, stuff like that, like, and vice versa. And he can tell you what works and what doesn't. So how much back and forth was there?
There was a good bit of back and forth, wasn't there, Matthias?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It was.
We had this one rehearsal where there were really some spots where I said, well, it's just not possible like this, or like the one with the ricochet I showed, where it's, of course it would be possible to play it in the beginning when it's low, but not in the end. So I suggested to change it both in the beginning and in the end, because it's useless if you change the sound in between. So I felt I was somehow more involved than usually in working on pieces.
And is that an aspect that you enjoyed? I mean, do you enjoy that kind of back and forth more so than, say, picking up the score and not having any communication with a composer?
Oh, that's one of the reasons I'm playing contemporary music, that I love to communicate with composers.
Yeah.
And when I'm playing Bach suites, I'm always annoyed about the fact that he's dead and I can't ask him questions.
Me too.
Because I mean, I'm not doing that very often, but it's so exciting, and there are things happening in this music that are so far away from what tradition says music has to be like at that time. Like, for instance, I think the saraband of the second suite starts with what's the English word, hembiole,
Yeah.
Which usually you don't do. You play the hembiole at the end, but I'm sure it starts with like that. And I would love to meet him and say, well, Johann Sebastian, am I right? And why did you do that? But I can't. But I can with composers living now. So, and I'm playing Xenakis next week, and I'm sure there are two just simple mistakes where he missed an accidental in the score. And I wonder why nobody asked him. I mean, he's composing a piece completely on two different scales, and then all of a sudden there is a tone that's half a tone off from that scale. That can't be. He must have forgotten to write this sharp, but nobody asked him. I would have asked him if we were still were living, and I love that. So also in this case, I love it if I get a score and we can talk about it. And of course, I'm always aware of the fact that there are better cellists than me, and things where I think, no, I can't do that. Others will be able to do that. But
not very many, I don't think.
Definitely not.
Some things are just
phenomenally difficult.
Impossible. You wouldn't need a third hand to do certain things, and I mean, I'm sure about that.
One thing actually on that whole aspect, where I can ask, since I have the advantage of actually being able to see the score here, which and of course when I'm working on doing the parts, doing that for Gráinne. One thing I wanted, did you discuss? Because I was actually quite surprised at how much the actual physicality of the piece, and had you actually considered the sort of unwritten sounds, you know, like when you've got all those really high glissandi and the actual resonance of the instrument itself, which actually adds an entirely new dimension, which is not visible on the score. You know, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, how do you actually factor that in, or was that just a happy accident?
Well, actually, that was a point why with this piece, COVID was really annoying, because I would have loved to work with Gráinne earlier, but she had COVID and just couldn't do it. And at a certain point, because there are a lot of things, as you mentioned in this score, that are written in a way, but the hidden sound behind it is something you can't write in ordinary notation. So at a certain point, it was really important for me to talk to Gráinne and like this very high harmonic place I showed, and just to know if she knows how it sounds, and if that's what she wants. And mostly she said, well, yes, that's right what I want. But it's hard to tell in some places because of limitations of notation. I would like to ask one question, and I'm glad that we're still 4 Irish with us, because last time, 3 weeks ago, we had this Yongi Pakpan piece. She's Korean, lives in Germany since the early 70s. But we're talking about the fact, does it sound Korean? So what about this piece? Does it sound Irish?
I was going to actually
No.
ask that. I don't know.
No, definitely
There's
not.
little tiny
No, I wouldn't
bits
think so, no.
there's tiny little harmonics, which I was thinking, I remembered Ian, because Ian was saying he had a small little kind of melody at one point within his work, and I was saying, you know, that was wonderful. It just came out, it was just so glorious. And I was wondering, maybe I can bring out a little bit of Irishness with this very high harmonics or something, just kind of like on fifths or fourths or whatever. Just kind of like as a tiny little reference to kind of our culture, etc. But I don't think it's not something I've tried to do anyway. I just don't want to, I haven't tried to kind of like specifically say I'm an Irish composer, because I prefer like, okay, I'm a European, so we're all part of the same, you know, continent, etc. Well, not continent, but we're all part in the EU. So
I think it's very European sounding.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
European, but not Irish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, was it Matthew Shelhorn, where he did the program of Irish touring composers? But he said it was very interesting that there was no identifiable Irish school, if you know what I mean, of contemporary music. There aren't really two. Ian is very different to Jude. Is very different to Gráinne. It's very different.
Yeah.
There isn't really.
No, there's no Irish school. Yeah, I don't think there's. You, Judith.
I mean, I think there's a few people deliberately using Irish idioms, like Donnacha Dennehy often uses Irish tunes and styles. So does Linda Buckley. So there's a few composers like that deliberately bringing Irishness into a lot of, not all of their music, but some of their music. But
then again, they're very different composers. They're very different.
Yeah, they are very different.
Everyone's so different. It is actually quite incredible on a small island. It's the beauty of it, because I think everybody kind of has something inspiring to offer. Certainly, yeah.
Can I play the devil's advocate there just a little? That if you ask most Irish people, do they have an accent or do they have an Irish accent, they'd probably say no. So we can't hear our own accent. So I throw that question actually to our 2 German listeners to say, can they hear something that to the Irish they can't hear, but to their ears actually sounds quite Irish? So I'm going to throw the question back to you, Matthias, and Professor Friedman there, if I can. What did the German ears hear, or did they hear anything? Just as we may not hear something.
Well, actually, I can't answer this question because I played it. I didn't listen to it. But maybe Friedemann can. Friedemann, du hast die Frage verstanden? Also, Hast du was Irisches gehört in dem Stück? Dein Ton ist aus. Dein Ton ist immer noch aus.
Ja,
Ah, jetzt.
ja. Okay, nein, ich hab nichts wirklich Irisches gehört. Nothing.
No, it's just I'm asking this because, as I said last time, we had this piece by the Korean composer, and we Europeans thought, oh yes, that sounds Korean to us. And then I had a guest, Hye Shin from Korea, a musicologist, and we asked it to her, and she said, no, that's not Korean sounding, which was very funny. And then Gráinne was also there, and so we already talked about that. If an Irish piece sounds Irish, and
But
I think it sounds European.
I wonder it's part of the reason that we are a small island, and most composers working here have at some stage had to travel abroad to do some part of their study. When Gráinne went to York, and all over the world, Judith, I think you heads off somewhere, didn't you?
Judith went to York as well.
York, sorry, yeah.
Went to York as well, and Berlin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the to get the sort of breadth of study that you need to sort of be au fait with what's happening in music today. You have to go outside. You have to go outside Ireland, so you're not going to absorb, be more European than sort of an insular Irish, whatever that is, you know.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, Joe. Also, I guess the wealth of contemporary music history, historically isn't Irish. So, I mean, you've also got that coming through as well. So there isn't a huge history of Irish contemporary music to listen to or to kind of base yourself off. So maybe that has something to do with it as well.
Okay, I just would do a short few final words now and then stop the stream. But that's no reason to leave the Zoom conference. We can just go on talking afterwards. But at a certain point, it's getting more personal and less official. So I would just end the official part now.
Can I suggest, Matthias, I don't know what your format is, but maybe we should let the music have the last word, and you should play a final piece that to focus in on. That's not to put you under pressure, maybe you don't want to do that, but maybe we should hear a small little piece of it again just to finish on, I suggest.
Yeah, that's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Any preferences? Gráinne, which part would you like to hear again?
Maybe the last part, the last quarter to the end, or last part of the end.
The last part of the end. So I start with that. No, I don't start there. I start with the high pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pressure. Okay, thanks for the idea, Derek. So this will be the final sounds for tonight. Oh, sorry.
Fantastic.
So this was the second Musikalischer
Brilliant.
Online
Well
Salon.
done.
Thanks to everyone who contributed to the discussion. Thanks to Gráinne for the piece that was written extra for this evening. And if you want, we meet again in 3 weeks for, then it's in German, for Cello-Einsatz bei Paul-Heinz Dietrich. Ja, das war der zweite Musikalische Online Salon. Schönen Dank an alle, die sich an der Diskussion beteiligt haben, an Gráinne Mulvey für das Stück, das extra für heute Abend entstanden ist. Und in 3 Wochen sehen wir uns wieder am 1. März zu Paul-Heinz Dietrichs Cello-Einsatz und Christoph Gruber als Gast. Einen schönen Abend noch.